Hello there, Breffnie O'Kelly, buyer's agent here in Ireland. Today's the kind of day, and this is the kind of place that might make anyone consider buying a holiday home here in Ireland, or maybe even retiring to Ireland. So, if you buy a property here, does it in fact entitle you to live here? And the answer is no, it doesn't. So, what we're talking today to Aaron Flynn, and Aaron Flynn is a qualified solicitor and he's Director of Immigration for Envoy Global here in Ireland. And he's going to tell us exactly who needs a visa to come to Ireland in the first place, how long you can stay in Ireland for a holiday, if you want to stay for longer, how you should go about doing that. This is a stamp zero visa that you might be applying for. And we'll also talk about who might be entitled to dual citizenship with Ireland. So we've really a lot to cover in Envoy, and Aaron, I should say, is an expert in this field. So you're going to this is going to be of use to you if you're thinking of buying in Ireland or moving to Ireland. So thank you for watching. Aaron's contact details are in the show notes at the end of it. Aaron Flynn, you're a qualified solicitor and you're the Director of Immigration in Ireland for envoyglobal.com. Thank you so much for being here today. I gather you're in London, so it's even extra nice of you to join us from there. I know you're usually based in Ireland.
Thank you, Breffnie, and thank you for the very kind invite. Yes, I'm in London for a few days just meeting with some clients, but usually I would be based out of our Dublin office, which is in Ballsbridge.
Excellent. So, Aaron, in other episodes, we cover different aspects of buying property in Ireland. But today, what I'd particularly love to talk about is how do people, how is it that people can live in Ireland? For example, yesterday I was contacted by someone who wants to buy a holiday home in Ireland. And I imagine that they may buy the holiday home and then they may wish to retire to it in due course. So, what I'd like to get clear here in this chat today is, how do we get to live in Ireland? How do we get to spend holiday time in Ireland? How does it all work? So maybe can we start with, if someone living in America or anywhere, and does it make a difference where you live, and you want to buy a holiday house in Ireland and spend X amount of time here, is there a finite amount of time we can spend or people can spend here without a visa?
Really good question, Breffney, and one I've probably been asked many times over the years because, as you know, Ireland is very popular for not just holiday makers, but for people who want to come here and retire. The general rule is everybody in the globe is split in Irish terms into visa or non-visa required. Visa in Ireland means something slightly different in most other countries. It's, I guess, complicated by how we use visa. For the purposes of this, I suppose, explanation, if you think about, there have been a group of countries where people need a visa to travel to Ireland and people who don't need a visa. So, for instance, people from China need a visa to come to Ireland to have to apply in advance at an embassy or a consulate, probably back in China. Whereas people from the USA, they don't need a visa in advance. They travel to the border and they present themselves and state their purpose when they come to Ireland and say, I'm here for a holiday. I'm here. If it's for work, you would need a different permission. So it depends on your nationality is the first thing.
And where can people get a sense of what rules apply to them? Is this listed on our immigration
Yeah,
website?
all of it. I won't say that the website is super user friendly, but there's an immigration service delivery is the main immigration website for Ireland, and you'll find a link there that says visa required nationals.
Okay,
And
very good. Well, I'm going to put a link to that.
that
Visa
sets out
required
the
nationals.
countries.
Lovely.
The second, I suppose, if you like, bucket that people then fall into is the duration of your trip to Ireland. So if you were coming, for instance, for a holiday, you can usually stay up to 90 days,
Okay.
as long as you meet the other requirements. So, you know, the Chinese national that we spoke about, they would have applied for their visa in advance and they would have said, we're coming to Ireland for 3 weeks or 4 weeks and they've got hotel bookings, etc. Non-visa required, like your US national just comes here and says, I'm here for a holiday. I'm going to tour around or I'm going to do whatever. And they
Good.
have, you know, usually their hotel booking, their, you know, their itinerary, what they plan to do, and they're entered. You come in, you travel through those hatches that we all pass through when we enter back into Dublin Airport. They put a stamp into your passport and in you come for whatever the duration is.
Okay,
Now,
so let's say I'm coming over to stay in my holiday house that I've bought, and I'm coming for 90, let's say I'm coming for 90 days during the summer, and maybe I'd like to come again for a month at Christmas. Can you do multiple 90-day stays?
you can
In
do 90 in 180 days. So
Okay,
usually 90 in 180 days,
right.
and then a further 90 in
In the next.
180 days, which kind of splits it into, if you like, two 6 month periods.
Yeah, okay.
Now, the important thing, I suppose, if you were coming to stay in your holiday home, you've bought your holiday home, you've been lucky to find somewhere you want to spend more time than your 90 days, you probably need to think about a long-term permission.
Exactly, because you
Long-term,
might like to retire here, perhaps, now that you've got the
yeah,
hang of it.
exactly. And that's probably most of the queries that we receive are either people who want to come visit their family here, maybe they've got children who've come to live and work here and they want to spend time with the grandchildren, or they themselves want to come and retire. And the the then important distinction is if you're over 90 days, it's considered a long stay. Again, it depends what nationality you are. But for most people coming to retire in Ireland, we're talking about a retirement visa, which in Ireland is called Stamp Zero.
Okay, Aaron, just before we get into Stamp Zero, can I ask you, you know, these buckets of visas, friendly kind of countries that need people to have a visa coming from and countries we don't. Are there loads of countries we don't need people to have a visa coming from? Or is it Canada, the USA, and England? Or is it not even that? Or is it lots
It's
more?
a pretty
Lots?
big group that
It's a
don't
big
need
group.
visas
Okay, it is a
to
big group.
come here.
Okay.
But the important part is even if you don't need a visa, if you are coming for a longer stay, you would
Gotcha.
need a permission. You
Okay,
do need to apply
perfect.
for something.
Okay, so we're
And
now into Stamp O.
we're into Stamp O or Stamp Zero. And just in relation to the stamps in Ireland, there are about maybe five or six numbers that we use to cover the various permissions.
Okay.
Stamp Zero is they call it a low level immigration permission.
Yeah.
And by that, it really means somebody who's coming to retire to live here. They've got sufficient financial resources and they can basically either have enough income to cover what they need to live here in
Yeah.
terms of renting a property, or they've got a lump sum to purchase a property, or they've actually purchased the property, which is, I'm sure, where your clients are coming from, is to actually purchase the property.
Excellent. So when you say a sufficient income to live here, what does that look like?
Good
What do we think?
question. And all of our expenses are increasing probably on a weekly basis at this stage. The rule from the Immigration Service Delivery, the immigration authorities in Ireland, it hasn't actually updated in a number of years, but the lump sum that they request per person is €50,000,
50.
50 per year, per person, per adult.
Wow.
Plus that lump sum that I spoke about, which is to cover unforeseen circumstances. In Ireland, we're terrified of people coming who maybe then have to be housed or taken care of by the state in terms of, health, etc. So these types of visas, €50,000 per year is income that they would say you need to cover yourself while you're living in Ireland. The lump sum to cover unforeseen expenses or
How much
sufficient
is
to
that?
purchase a property. They don't specify, but they say sufficient to purchase a property. Now, Breffnie,
Okay.
that's your expertise. You would
Okay,
know
right.
what
So
it
they're
takes
going
to
to have
purchase
to
a
have,
property.
well, okay, if I were just to put a figure on that, I'd say you'd really want up to 500,000. That would be your lump sum. You'd get something for less, but yeah,
Yeah.
500. Okay, lump sum to purchase a property. Great.
Plus,
Really interesting.
yeah, plus, and this is where the health part of it comes in,
Yeah.
medical insurance
Hmm.
sufficient to provide full cover in a private medical facility. So basically, full medical insurance, either travel insurance from your home state
Yeah.
or local medical insurance from Ireland, sufficient to cover you for full treatment. Now,
Okay.
that can obviously depend on where you've come from. Maybe you've got medical or travel insurance in the country, in the States, or wherever else you're coming from, that will cover you overseas, including in Ireland, for usually a particular period. It depends on the policy.
Okay.
If you haven't, then you're probably looking at buying a policy
Here.
in Ireland. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Really interesting, Aaron.
Yeah. So again, when we tend to get these queries, we would usually assess somebody in totality, have a look at where they are in their life. Are they retired? Maybe they're thinking about retirement and they're doing their 3-year plan. We're looking at different options. And we had quite a few queries just before Christmas in relation to that, where people are looking at Ireland,
Mm.
maybe looking at other EU countries.
Mm.
And, there's certain considerations then that are important.
Hmm.
Ireland, obviously, the residency that you get in Ireland is stamp zero. It only allows you reside in Ireland. It's a permission to live in Ireland. People think when you get an EU-based permission to live in one of the countries, that it
Yeah.
means you can pop into another EU country. It
Ah,
doesn't work like that in practice.
lovely. So this doesn't convert to a passport. This is just Irish residency, permission
It's
to
our
live here.
Yeah, it's Irish
Okay.
residency. Now, it's, as I say, it's submitted on the basis very much of your financial background. You need to prove your finances,
Hmm.
bank statements, your pension documentation, maybe your
Hmm.
investments. Your investments have to be accessible, so they can't be,
Yeah.
effectively locked away that you can't get access to them.
Yeah.
And to make the visa application, which is where we will come in, we gather all of the documents, we fill in an application form, we get the supporting evidence, which is the finance, passports, birth certificates, the usual documentation. We submit it to the immigration office. Because we're talking about overseas finance, overseas investments, bank accounts, it needs to be reviewed and validated by an Irish-based accountant who are familiar with overseas finances. So effectively, we will get a report from an accountant who will set out in a kind of an Excel spreadsheet format what the finances look like, what they would convert to in terms of euro, and if it's coming from the States, for instance, what the exchange rate is, and that then sets out what the lump sum is, what the income is per year. Because as you know, people coming from the States, they may have a pension, or it could be effectively in one policy that
Hmm.
people put all of their investments in over their lifetime, and
Hmm.
that effectively is their pension lump sum. It's usually granted for an initial 2-year period.
Okay.
You come in and then have obviously a look at the housing market, have a
Hmm.
look for a property. Breffnie, I'm sure you'll be able to find them their perfect
Hmm.
property where that will be. And at the end of that 2-year period, your circumstances have probably changed. You've
Hmm.
probably now found where you want to live, and you purchase that property. So now when your visa comes for renewal at the end of that 2-year period, you're effectively submitting an update to your personal circumstances.
Hmm.
Now you've found your property, you live in Ireland, you're not needing to show that lump sum sufficient to purchase a property because you have a property.
Yeah.
You've probably lived in that property for a year. You can show what your expenses are, how much it takes to live there, your groceries, your utilities, your travel costs. And so you kind of prove it in a slightly different way. And usually that visa then will be renewed for a further 3 years.
Okay.
After that, it's renewed pretty much in practical terms in perpetuity on 5-year periods.
On a
So it's
five-year
two
period.
years, then you set up a different kind of, what it looks like now in Ireland for 3 years, and then 5 years, 5 years, 5 years. Now,
Okay.
just to touch off a question that is a point that you made, Breffnie, in terms of does this lead to a passport? Because this is often, a very important question.
Hmm.
The stated guidance from the immigration authorities is that stamp zero, which is the immigration permission we're talking about, does not count as reckonable residence for citizenship.
Okay.
But there have been cases of people who are on stamp zero being able to make a case for citizenship, and those applications have been granted. So there's somewhat of a
Okay, so there is a potential, and you probably would know the kinds of circumstances that would be favorably considered.
exactly, yeah. And so when you come to apply for this, sometimes we've done these applications for people who have no connection to Ireland.
Yeah.
We've done them for people who've never even been to Ireland until you come to submit the application, and
Hmm.
they might come and meet somebody like you, shows them
Hmm.
around, shows them
Hmm.
properties, and they fall in love with the place, and they say, "This
Hmm.
is where we want to live."
Hmm.
And then they come, they're very happy here. All of the aspects of Ireland, the culture, the nature, the
Hmm.
beaches, all of that is, what we would, I think, probably sell ourselves abroad as
Hmm.
why you would want to come to live here. Or you might, as I say, have children who live here. You've got grandchildren who live here. They're in school. You want to come spend some time with them. Those people then would acquire what we call Irish associations. They're associated with people who are maybe in Ireland. You've got a reason to be here.
Okay.
And
They
that
still
can,
need to do all the stamp zero stuff. Sorry to interrupt you there, Aaron. So there's nothing there's no separate bucket for people with Irish associations. It's just that this may flower into something like a passport if they've Irish
yeah,
associations.
yes. And I'll just explain a kind of
Sorry.
an additional point.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come to apply for the stamp zero, having Irish associations, because it's a discretionary application, is an important consideration.
Gotcha.
So it would help to get the stamp zero application granted. Um, when we do our original assessments for these, often people will have maybe an affinity to Ireland. Maybe their grandparent or their great grandparent, or maybe even their great great grandparent left Ireland
Mm-hmm.
100, 150, 200 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They would have some Irish associations in the form of descendancy, heritage. The way that we look at these types of cases is when we assess them at the start, if you had a grandparent including Northern Ireland. This applies Northern Ireland and Ireland, who was born on the entire island. We can obtain citizenship through a process called foreign birth registration.
Excellent.
Birth
So a
registration.
grandfather born on the island of Ireland, including Northern Ireland, gets you citizenship.
Through a process called foreign birth registration, which is another immigration permission, which requires documentation from the grandparent to the parent to the grandchild. It's submitted to the Department of Foreign Affairs, and it leads to the registration of your birth as a foreign birth. And now you're an Irish citizen and you apply for your passport. So, for instance, we've had people who've come to us and said, we want to come live in Ireland. We've looked at the options. And when we've sat down to speak with them, we ask them usually at the start of it, why Ireland? Have you been here? And they say, oh, my grandfather came from wherever.
Bingo.
And then we can have a look at it and we can think about proving it. And, we're in 2024. The vast majority of Irish people who went to live in the States and Canada and Australia, they probably left 1840s, 50s, right the way up to the 1900s. And yeah, so lots of those people now, their grandchildren are the people who are about to retire, just in the kind of time frame that we're talking about. And it can work. It can be difficult to get documents from that period, but we've done plenty of those applications. So foreign birth registration is another option if the stamp zero doesn't work, or maybe it's a better option because it
gets you a passport.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a dual. We allow people to hold an Irish passport along with their other passport, do we?
Yeah,
so they don't have to relinquish anything.
Yeah, we're quite unusual. Well, maybe not that unusual, but yeah, we have no objection to dual nationality or any multiples of nationality. Lots of people who have Irish citizenship but have one, maybe two, maybe three, four other citizenships. Some countries do have a prohibition on dual nationality.
Okay.
Germany, India, for instance. If you take up citizenship of another country, you automatically lose the initial citizenship. But Ireland, we don't have a problem with it. Citizenship's a fantastic thing to get because obviously Ireland, it's now there was an index. There's a couple of indexes of passports, kind of almost like a table of how strong a passport is.
Yeah,
you might have seen this. Yeah.
How many smiles you get when you hold this passport?
yeah. The Irish passport is considered in the Henley Index in global passports as at number 3. It's joint number 3 in the world. So that means it gets you 160 odd countries visa free on arrival. And it's considered a powerful passport, we call it. In European terms, it's almost doubly powerful because we have a shared common travel area with the United Kingdom, as you know.
Yeah.
And that's down to our background as, former part of the United Kingdom. You can travel freely between both countries. You can live in both countries, vote, work, live with your family. Essentially, your rights in both directions, British passport holder into Ireland and an Irish passport holder into Britain, is full free movement, common travel area. So for people about thinking about coming to live here in Ireland, getting an Irish passport gives you the entire European Union, but also the United Kingdom.
Also, with Britain thrown in for free or the United Kingdom thrown in as a free bonus. Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, this is fascinating. That's fascinating to hear that we're number three, isn't it, in the
No,
Henley Index,
yeah,
joint
number
joint
three in the world, and
in the
we've
world.
increased, over the last number of years. That's down to, our global reach, the trade deals that we've done, being a member of the European Union, having, quite a high standard in terms of how we manage our country, how
Hmm.
we, when we travel abroad. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, having an Irish passport or having the ability to get one is, it's a really key benefit, if you like, to having Irish citizenship or citizenship by heritage. Plus, it obviously allows you to come live in Ireland and purchase a property.
Hmm.
But to take it back to your first point,
Yeah.
Breffney, you don't need to be a citizen and you don't need to have residency or any immigration permission to purchase a property in Ireland.
No. And yesterday, or I'm not sure how the sequence of these podcasts will come out, but we spoke to James Ryan, a solicitor, just about the conveyancing part. And we did indeed clarify that anyone can buy a property, but it doesn't necessarily give you the right to live in it or
Yeah,
live here. So this is why you are so useful to talk to in terms of what you're allowed to do once you own this property.
yeah, exactly. And there might be other options then as well, depending where people are in their lives.
Hmm.
Lots of the time we're talking about people who are retired.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're talking about maybe making a life change and they've amassed a lump sum and they're thinking they'd like to set up a business,
Yeah.
maybe do something in Ireland. We did have an investor visa option up until March of last year, where,
I saw that. We
yeah,
scrapped
where
that. It seems like it might have been being abused a little bit.
it was it was a good option. It was brought in 2008 after the global financial difficulties when Ireland needed to the idea was to tap into the diaspora globally who maybe were interested in, putting some investment back into Ireland.
Hmm.
It worked across a number of different investments, and it did bring in a lot of brought in hundreds of millions into Ireland, to be honest, into various projects. Some of them housing, some of them social, sporting, arts. We did quite a bit of work in it, but had we have had this conversation a year ago and you said we've got an investor visa option, do you see any risks with that being cancelled? There were some rumblings outwardly, from various institutions, the EU, even the US authorities were slightly uncomfortable with some of the investments that were being made and the emanation of the wealth or funds.
Okay,
A
right. So
lot of it had
slightly
come
money
from China,
laundering concerns.
Yeah, but we still didn't think that it would come to an end as abruptly as it did, and it
Okay.
basically was cancelled with like 2 weeks' notice last
Yeah.
March.
Yeah.
So that finished. That's an investor visa option. Other EU countries do
So
have
that's no
those
longer,
options.
sorry to interrupt you there. And that's we no longer have that particular investor visa option. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's gone. It did require quite substantial investment. It was a
Hmm.
million euros to
Hmm.
invest.
Hmm.
You could club together with other investors and go into different various projects who had to be approved by the Department of
Ideal.
Justice, but
Yeah.
it cancelled to any new application in March of last year. I think it was March of last year. Now, the only other option that we have similar to that is they call it a STEP visa,
Hmm.
startup entrepreneurial visa. And that is, again, very specific rules, as lots of these immigration processes do. But if you have a business plan and you've got what they call a novel idea that is capable of creating jobs, and in Ireland we're all about job creation, aren't we? That's pretty much what our economy, the
Hmm.
backbone of our economy is jobs creation and overseas foreign direct investment. But if you have an idea and you've got capital of 50,000 euros, you will be granted a visa, which is a different immigration permission. Firstly, we were talking about the stamp zero.
Hmm.
This one is called stamp four.
Right.
And stamp four is it's long-term residency in Ireland. It's the equivalent of a green card in the States.
Oh, for
So
50,000.
50,000 euros. You submit your application with your very robust business plan, and it really does come down to the business plan. It
Okay.
can't be different types of industries, such as service-based industries. Really, what we're looking for is the next Mark Zuckerberg who's got an idea, who'll come to Ireland and set it up here. It'll create some jobs. And yeah, it's usually granted for 2 years, and then they revisit, look at your business plan. Have you created the jobs? Is your business viable? Is it growing? If it is, then your visa will be renewed. and it's stamp 4. You can pass it on to your family members, and that will count for citizenship. And people have come to Ireland on those visas,
Oh,
got their stamp visa, got their stamp 4, and we filed citizenship applications, and they're now Irish citizens. And their companies have gone on to grow to be very big companies, maybe acquired
wonderful.
by multinationals.
Okay.
So we do have an option for, kind of good ideas for the business entrepreneur who wants to come to Ireland. So that's probably for the people who aren't thinking retirement. They're probably before
Sure.
retirement.
True, and probably not our market, but still, that's a bit fascinating. So I'd love to ask you, 50,000 lump sum to put into your business with a super duper business plan. Then do you have to show that you've got means to support yourself while you're here?
Not necessarily. No,
Oh,
if you've
wow.
got your business ID, effectively it's assumed that you'd be working in your own business,
Yeah.
and yeah, your stamp 4 permission allows you reside and work. Effectively, most of the conditions of the immigration permissions we're talking about have a kind of a subset of conditions, which is that you won't become a burden on the state.
Yeah.
You won't become in need of health. This wasn't really an issue up until COVID. It was always in the background of immigration that, if you're in Ireland and you're working, you're paying your taxes, you're paying your pay related social insurance, you get access to the hospitals because you pay.
Hmm.
But since COVID, particularly, at the commencement of COVID, there's been a requirement for medical insurance or health insurance for most immigration permissions who come to Ireland.
Okay.
And that's probably in line with other country requirements. So just to compare us to our closest neighbour in the United Kingdom, most of their immigration permissions, firstly, the government fee to apply for them, most of the fees for our immigration permissions are €500, €1,000. The types of fees in the United Kingdom, £5,000, £10,000 for a similar type of permission,
Okay, right. So very high barrier to entry, even just to apply.
just
Right.
to apply. And then on top, they will have what they call an NHS surcharge, which is
Mhm.
probably another couple of £1,000 to get access to their health
Healthcare.
system. So
Okay.
we have a lower government fee, but we have a requirement for health insurance or some form of travel insurance that will cover you for your time in Ireland.
Okay.
So to kind of answer that question, Breffnie, you have to be able to support yourself in your own business. And if you did, come here and you became, your business didn't work and you became destitute, your visa wouldn't be renewed.
Okay. So you've got a 2 year window to get cracking, get it up and running and make right.
Exactly.
And are there any changes coming down the track? So someone's listening to this now and wherever thinking, yes, I kind of fit the bill for a stamp 0. Should we be saying, hurry up there now? It mightn't last forever or?
Yeah, as I say, just to compare it with the investor visa, which had we have had this chat this time last year, I would have said,
Right.
I
two
don't
weeks.
think
So
so.
we don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, but then it did
Hmm.
change with no notice. But the stamp 0, it's been around for quite a while now. It's worked quite well.
Hmm.
The department, the immigration office are quite happy with how it works. It gives a
Okay.
good option to people. And we do want people to come to retire in Ireland. It is a fantastic place to come and retire. And the ones that we've helped have been very happy and have told their friends about it. And they have, maybe come and bought properties here. And um, my feeling is no, I don't expect changes in this area. Lots of the immigration permissions are reviewed on a periodic basis.
Yeah.
Just after Christmas, well, actually just before Christmas, changes were announced to the employment permit system, which is the sponsored method
Yeah.
of coming to work here. They had uh, they had done a review over that year. Usually, it's to kind of change eligible jobs. Some jobs don't qualify for employment permits. They might change if people are struggling to hire people, and they added quite a considerable amount of jobs to the ones that do now qualify. But they increased all of the salary thresholds
Ah,
substantially for some of the jobs,
ah,
which is good for the worker, but maybe not so good for the business, particularly in times now when all of our expenses are increasing.
yeah.
But I guess for the person coming to work in Ireland, if everybody else's expenses are increasing, particularly property and rental,
Yeah.
you need more money to live here.
Yeah.
The stamp 0 requirement, the only way I could see that increasing, similar to the salary threshold, is the income needed to live here for a year, which, to be
Yeah. It
honest,
might
is
go
at
up from
50,000
50,000.
euros.
It's light enough, isn't it? Still, if you
It,
own your own house, you should be able to manage on it or if you're not paying the cost of accommodation out of it.
Exactly. If you're not paying accommodation, would you need 50,000 to live in Ireland? I don't know. If it depends what you want to do, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're traveling or cultural activities. But I would say €50,000 is quite a considerable sum to live in Ireland. You'll be quite comfortable living in Ireland, and it probably favours quite well to some of our other European neighbours in terms of what's necessary to live here. So, yeah, I couldn't say categorically that I don't think it'll change, but I think it's unlikely to change in the immediate term. I think it's likely to stay the same.
Okay.
Lump sum, purchase a house. That's really where it's at, isn't it? If you're coming to live, it's going to be down to the property pricing. Because
Okay. And
again,
Aaron, are they quick on processing these kind of stamp zero applications? If someone's thinking of coming over to view a couple of houses next month and they might start this process,
yeah,
how long might they expect it to take?
the processing time itself at the minute is guided at 4 months.
Okay.
So usually 4 months. It can be up to 6 months. If somebody came over at Breffnie to meet you and you brought them to see their dream homes in a couple of locations and they
Mm-hmm.
said, yes, we have to have it, I would probably say get in contact with a company like us.
Mm-hmm.
We would do an initial assessment, make sure to meet the requirements to file the application, and then we would help them gather the documentation,
Mm-hmm.
look at the documentation, get their accountant's report done. Although that sounds, quite doable, it can take 4 to 6 weeks just to prepare the application, gather the documentation, get the report, deal with queries, and then submit it. The better
Okay.
application that you make, the more complete that has
Mm-hmm.
all of the evidence, the less likely there are to be any inquiries from the department. And it's a kind of a two-stage process. You get a conditional letter, and then you come in, and then you register for your immigration permission after you come into Ireland.
Okay, so it can be done remotely. We can start
No,
the
the first part, yeah, the first part of it can be done remotely. The application for the conditional offer, as it's called, or the conditional permission.
yeah,
But then you must come to Ireland,
yeah.
bring yourself to the immigration office, which is in Burkey in Dublin, and you give some of your details, your fingerprints, your picture, and
Mm-hmm.
basically they create a residence permit, and that then is sent to the address that you're going to live in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you may not have completed your house purchase at that stage.
Yeah,
Your
yeah,
your colleague
yeah,
who you spoke to yesterday probably explains how long the conveyancing process
yeah,
takes, and they might have temporary accommodation, or maybe they'll only come to Ireland later
yeah,
when the house purchase is complete, and
yeah.
that then leads to where the residence permit will be sent. That's fine. Usually, the approval letters have a 6 month validity from the date of approval. So you submit your
Okay.
application, it's approved. You have to come in within 6 months. If you can't, let's say your house purchase, hopefully this doesn't happen, but let's say your house purchase was delayed and it took
Mm-hmm.
longer than 6 months, we would then get back in contact with the department and say, look, can we extend the validity of this letter? Circumstances have changed. The house purchase hasn't complete. If it's based on a house purchase, of
Mm-hmm.
course. And usually the department would extend the validity of the letter. And yeah, we would arrange for them to come in, and we would, as part of our services, make the appointment for them to register. We look after the renewal of it. We can help them with all of their immigration queries.
Wonderful.
And,
Mm.
if there's other related things then that might happen, um, such as family coming to visit, such
Mm.
as pet immigration, which we
Mm.
don't really handle. I'm an expert in humans, but I'm not an expert in the other animals. And you probably need somebody else to assist you with that part. And that's an important thing. They're members
Oh,
of our families,
definitely. Yeah,
they
definitely.
need to be looked after. So we would introduce you to probably people who look after that. And maybe the physical move, you might need people to actually do the moving
Yeah,
from the States to Ireland.
yeah,
And, we would have other people in our network that would help with that.
yeah. Very good. So then, am I right in understanding, say, it takes 4 to 6 weeks to get your paperwork together? Once they've made contact with you, they'll be back and forthing for 4 to 6 weeks just to get all the documentation. Then you submit it, then the department might take 4 months. At the moment, they're saying 4 months. And then you get a letter that's valid for 6 months to materialize in the country and register yourself in person. Okay, that's fair enough. That all seems very doable and reasonable.
Yeah, it's a pretty good process at the minute.
Mm.
Lots of the immigration processes globally are paper-based. They're
Mm-hmm.
detailed application forms, they're detailed documentation. They're a little bit similar to making a mortgage application or maybe
Mm.
purchasing a property.
Mm-hmm.
And what we find when we do these is for people who are looking at a property, maybe working with somebody like your good self,
Mm-hmm.
Breffnie, they've probably gathered a lot of the documentation that we need anyway as part of that process.
Precisely, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
You
We've got
know,
proof of
so
funds. We've got a lot of different things on file. Yeah, true.
yeah, exactly. And they've started to think about the same types of things, even, the purchase of the property, they may have had to apply for a PPSN, which you need, as you know.
That's what
Yeah.
I'd like to talk to you about, the PPS number, Aaron. Can
Mm,
I say, I have seen, okay, by PPS number, we're talking about a personal public service number that anyone who is buying a property needs to have. And I have seen this take 3 days to get granted,
mm,
and I've seen it take 6 months to
yeah.
come through. What is your experience of this?
Somewhat similar, unfortunately.
Mm,
I don't know why it's such a difficult thing, given how essential it is to live, work, and obtain most services in Ireland. But we see most of that on the employment permit, the sponsored immigration service
mhm,
side, where if you're a worker and you come to Ireland, you've got your contract, your employment permit, you register your immigration permission. To start to pay tax, you need to get your PPSN. You go to an appointment, usually at one of the local
mhm,
Department of Social Welfare offices. You present your passport, proof of residence, and it can come out. It can be quite quick, and it can
mhm,
come out, as you said, 2 to 3 days. We have other clients. They come to Ireland. There may be engineers that have to go onto building sites. They need a safe pass. To get the
mhm,
safe pass, you have to register and have a PPSN to do the training.
mhm.
We've seen those ones take 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks. There doesn't seem to be a consistency in it. And I'm not sure whether it's some offices in certain regions are better and some are under resourced. And then for non resident people, it's even more complicated because you're
Mm,
not attending the appointment.
mhm,
You're giving documentation to say that you're purchasing a property, you're an overseas resident, and then that leads to having to deal with revenue. And I'm sure you spoke about this in other, or you will in other podcasts, registration for property tax.
mhm,
If it's going to be leased out, then you have to register for, the tenant has to withhold tax at source now.
mhm.
There's all sorts of different rules. If I'm honest, where we've had difficulties in the past, we've escalated them to the relevant government minister.
That's exactly what I've done too. I had a client who
Okay.
she'd completed her purchase, and as you know, you have to file your stamp duty within 40 days of completion of your purchase. And we were on day 38, and I wrote to the minister and I said, "We've applied for this 6 months ago, and if we have to pay stamped, extra in charges on it,
Surcharge.
it's not, we're not going to do it because." And she got her number the next day. But I don't even know if that was coincidental because I never got a reply from the minister. I just saw that the number was issued. So it is interesting, isn't it? But it's
Yeah.
a bit like I think what you said in terms of getting your paperwork right at the start. If you get your paperwork right for your stamp zero, the chances are you'll have a quicker delivery of this visa. And I have seen with different clients, the ones who are super efficient and used to dealing with documents online, and they just have a folder of documents and they have everything ready to go. They tend to come out quickly. And it's the ones who make a bit of a meal of it, who just, I realize now actually that it's something I need to do a bit more guidance with or handhold, and we nearly need to complete it together online or something just to
Yeah.
get it done.
Exactly. And it's almost like, one of those processes that's circular where you have to start at some point in order to
Yeah.
get one document to get the next document. And the process may not make sense.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, how do I get that if I have to get this document first? And,
Yeah.
like lots of those processes, not just in Ireland, but in other countries, what we would say is lean on your experts who maybe know how to do that. And, when we do an immigration process, often, for instance, this type of permission stamps here, we're thinking about health insurance, medical insurance. We need that to submit the application. Health declaration, which is probably going to be some form of report from your local doctor.
Mm-hmm.
When we're doing an immigration process, the ones that we think people will have a difficulty with, that they might gloss over and go,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine, I'll be able to get that. If you're coming from some countries, you need to get police clearance, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
you need to
Yeah.
get,
Yeah.
a police report.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the States, for instance, that can
Yeah.
look different state by state.
Yeah.
Ireland generally insists on a local police report. So the
Mm-hmm.
district in which you live in, like if you're in New York, for instance, it will be, the local police station rather
Yeah.
than a state police
Yeah.
or FBI. And it can be impossible to get appointments in the States. So what we do when we do the immigration process is think, what are people going to have problems with? What's
Hmm.
going to be the real
Yeah.
document that takes the longest? That's where we start.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Very
get
good.
them onto that at the start. And so it might be the case for the PPSN.
Yeah.
How we've done it in the past is where we've had difficulties is escalated up to the minister. And I'd have a similar experience to you, Breffnie,
Mm.
where we've escalated it. You give the details and it's come back almost immediately.
Yeah.
And,
Interesting.
it's not, that shouldn't be the process, but that has succeeded. But that should,
Mm.
that shouldn't be the way that it works.
Yeah, it seems
But
to be a loophole. Like so many other things work smoothly here. We're so good at so many things. That just seems to be one thing that should be the next on someone's list. Because when we get automating, we're very good at automating, but it's just
yeah,
like this has been forgotten somewhere.
yeah, I totally agree. And that's probably the reason for it is that it isn't super automated.
Mm.
Immigration, for instance, the vast majority of it at the moment is going through a digitization and it's
Hmm.
becoming more online based, friendly to documents, electronic upload of documents. Not always. Sometimes it's still an old school prepare a big bundle of documents and handwrite and original wet ink sign. But for lots of it, it's digital and that's the way it should be. But the PPSN, I wonder whether, because this is also relevant in the world today, we've had over 100,000 Ukrainians come into Ireland.
Hmm.
There's a separate process for them. They're able to avail of immediate
Hmm.
temporary protection, but the
Hmm.
process does seem to work quite well. You get your protection, your
Yeah.
immigration permission immediately,
Yeah.
and you also get your PPSN immediately.
Absolutely. So we can do it.
We can
We
do it.
can
So I
do it.
wonder whether the resources have been focused on delivering that service and whether
Maybe.
there's less resources available to deliver the standard services. I'm not sure that's the case, but I just
I
wonder whether
don't
that.
that's not my my experience has been quite varied for quite a long time. It hasn't particularly got worse since then, but yeah, maybe.
Maybe. And is that experience Dublin? Is it other parts of Ireland? Or have you seen it in
Well, I'm just talking about people buying from abroad. So they could be coming from Australia, they could be coming from Canada, they could be coming from the States, and they're always applying online. And I've just seen such a variance in how quickly they get their PPS. I mean, sometimes I can't believe my eyes. They have it in three
yeah,
days, and sometimes, as I've said, it's taken 7 months. And
yeah,
but I do think actually, for me, one learning I have now is I just need to really pay more attention to getting that cracking. And it is actually making me think that even if they don't have the property that they want to buy, the very fact that they're working with me, who is an agent, I'm an agent,
yeah,
maybe I can write a letter supporting the fact that they've retained me, I'm working on their behalf, and they are, I might just try that with the next client and just see how we get
absolutely.
on with that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And you'll have taken them on as a client and you'll have done
Precisely,
your
out of
own
all their
processes. Yeah,
anti-money laundering stuff and everything.
yeah.
Well, now, Aaron, anything else we should touch on before I let you get back to gorgeous London? And
Yeah. So I think what I would say is the stamp zero process is a really good process for people thinking about coming to retire to Ireland. It's worked very well over the years. The processing time's at 4 months. It can be quicker.
Mhm.
We've submitted applications in years gone by where it's taken 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. So it is a part of the department that's focused on delivering this service. And
Okay,
I
they
don't have the
want.
numbers, of successful applications, but I know from our business and from ones that we've done over the years that it is a really good process in terms of coming to live in Ireland,
And
and
the
it's
beauty of
perfect.
working with someone like you is that it's a bit, as you say, it's like a mortgage application. You won't submit it until you feel it's robust and visa worthy or stamp zero
Exactly,
worthy.
yeah, that's a very good point, Breffney. What we do is we do a very detailed assessment at the very outset. And we don't submit applications of any type for any immigration process, be it a visit visa to an employment permit to a longer one like this, unless we think and believe it will succeed.
Hmm.
We pretty much have 100% success rate because we
Hmm.
do that robust assessment. And it's not a case of we'll gather your documents and we'll submit it and hope for the best. We don't hope for the best. We submit and we pretty much know that it'll succeed. So
Yeah,
that's really what I would say is do your preparation, get your
yeah,
assessment done early. And it's good that if, they've already been working with somebody like you, Breffney, because if they come to me or my company and start to ask about coming to live in Ireland, I can talk all day about the immigration process, but then inevitably they'll start to ask me about housing.
Mm-hmm.
Where would I find a house?
Mm-hmm.
How do I find a
Mm-hmm.
house?
Mm-hmm.
What are
How
the
does
good
it work?
areas? How
Mm-hmm.
does it work? All of those things. And I'm obviously admitted as a solicitor. I know how the conveyancing process works, but I don't practice in that area, and I haven't really in my lifetime. So they really need to meet somebody like you to help
Yeah.
them do all of those parts. And
Yeah.
we have the network to do all of the immigration aspects. The company that I work for, Envoy, we're a global company. We have offices in the States. We have offices UK, Ireland, France, Singapore, and we're opening up offices in different parts of the world on a year-on-year basis. So we have full global capability. We have a technology, like we spoke about, digitization, where we
Mm-hmm.
make this process as painless as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're doing a case like this, for instance, you would get in contact with us and we would gather the documentation electronically through our proprietary system.
Mm-hmm.
We prepare all of the application. We share. We do our consultations in this format. We sometimes meet our clients like this in
Mm-hmm.
either in a meeting like this or maybe in person in Dublin, and we submit the application and we look after all other aspects of it then afterwards. We don't just say, okay, best of luck when you come to Ireland. We,
Mm-hmm.
get you registered. We look after the renewal. We're
Mm-hmm.
available for all questions that you have afterwards because your circumstances will change, right?
Mm-hmm. Of course.
You know, Maybe family members now will say, oh, mom and dad
That
lives in
looks
Ireland.
nice. Mm-hmm.
How do I go to visit them there? And so we do
Mm-hmm.
all those related services. And yeah, we like to provide a kind of a friendly white glove service that covers what you need from start to finish to get you
Mm-hmm.
into Ireland and keep you compliant and renewed on an ongoing basis.
Excellent. That sounds so reassuring to hear. And then I'm assuming, obviously, I'll put your contact details in the show notes, Aaron, but you'll be able to talk people through once they get in touch with you, the kinds of fees you charge, and then they'll get a sense of it all from there.
Exactly. Yeah. Obviously, there's a
Great.
government fee, as I said, for most visas. It's
Exactly.
it's
Yeah,
not
that's not
prohibitive
your
for
fee.
Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's our own fees, and then there's the accountant fees if we are doing the stamp zero
Sure.
to effectively validate the report. The relationship we have with a couple of accountants to do that is usually based on the extent of finances, which creates the complexity of that report. The more,
Yeah. Yeah.
obviously, the
More
more
complex,
finances, the
the
more
more
complex it
time.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks, Breffnie. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me here. I love talking about immigration and everything to do with Ireland, and yeah, I'd be delighted to help anybody.
Great, Aaron. That's so good. You're the missing link in the chain, and I'm thrilled to have had this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Breffnie. Have a great day. Have a great
Yeah,
weekend.
you too. Thanks, Aaron.